This is a committee meeting of the Department of Public Works. My name is Councilor Michael Green. I'm joined by Councilor Bay, Councilor Thompson, and Councilor Lovejoy Grinnell. This meeting is to discuss the pilot program for supplemental sidewalk snow removal. So I'll turn it over for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilor. My name is Jeremy Robinson, DPW Commissioner. In today's agenda, I'll give you a little bit of background of our supplemental sidewalk snow removal program, as well as the proposal for the winter, proposed routes, an overview of the contract, a summary, and open it up for questions afterwards. So a little background on our snow removal from the sidewalks is it was successful in 2019 season, even though it was shortened. JSK came in around February, ended in April, did approximately 20 miles, which is 40 miles of sidewalk. Report submitted to Common Council of the, I don't know if you got that, Councilor Bay, I know you was talking about that in council the other day, but we gave a progress report of how they did last year. Overall, with some positive feedback, and the market for this year hasn't changed dramatically. So, proposal for this winter, the season will align with our snow season, DPW snow season, which is typically in November to the middle of April. The triggers will remain the same, which is 3 inches for them to come out and plow. Funding is in place for the full season, roughly about $250K. The pilot will expand from 20 to 38 miles, approximately 76 miles of sidewalk. The proposed routes, we partnered with SMTC to get some of the major arterials as well as some areas of interest, mostly areas that are hazardous to high traffic pedestrian walks. As you can see, we got a list of streets for this year. The highlighted streets are what we added, which is new to the list this year. There's quite a few. Obviously, we doubled it, so from 20 to 38, it's almost double in size. So looks pretty spread out evenly throughout the city. There's also a map to show the actual highlighted routes. Overview of our contract. Process improvements, integrating technology. JSK is committed to hiring local residents, and they also added us as an additional insurer to their policy. Is that correct? Overview of the contract. This year, obviously, this season is a little longer, so they will be able to go out and identify some of the potential issues before going into the actual snow plowing operation. They also agreed to put GPS on their tractors, so that's good for us to know where they've been and what they're doing. We also have a new sensor deployment, which we're thinking about exploring, which will eliminate the human element of telling these guys to go out because it's 3 inches out there or 4 inches. So that's a pretty new and good thing for us.
Sorry, can you explain that a little more?
I'll let Neil Burke.
Neil Burke, Transportation Planner for DPW. This sensor deployment is something that we're going to work collaboratively with JSK on. This is something that's new, and basically what this would allow for is us to measure with a bit more accuracy different points around the city. So if we look at the snow totals, say from the National Weather Service or the local sites, a lot of those are taken from the airport, which, as we know, it's not too far away, but the difference can be significant, and we're trying to mitigate and remove that wiggle room between what's actually being forecast and what's actually falling to the ground here in the city.
But it's still like supplemented with human observation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's human backups on every level, and that's from Jeremy on downward.
I didn't think I was going to get out of it too easy, Counselor, so still got to do some work. But like I said, JSK is anticipating hiring new employees to cover these routes. There's a provision in their agreement to hire city residents, so I went over that as well. That's in their agreement. The insurance, their major challenge last year, I guess, was for us to obtain insurance. Well, JSK to obtain insurance for liability reasons. City was added as an additional insured to JSK policy, so that's new this year. So in summary, we plan to extend last year's pilot by 18 miles. We put in a few provisions, which is hiring of city workers as well as the insurance. And we plan on having another successful season. Any questions?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the explanation, Commissioner. So I know initially when, and I was trying to look through the list to try to determine, which I can't write offhand, but I know initially when, how you doing, Councilor Doherty? Former Councilor Doherty, the second time he pushed the snow ordinance, we were specific about school routes, main thoroughfares. It looks like that's what's covered here. And so my question, how successful are we in covering all of those areas? Are we close? Is this like the complete list? That's what I couldn't really determine at a glance.
In terms of covering schools?
Yeah.
I think, and Neil, you might be able to speak to this in a little bit more detail. I think schools are counted in terms of the areas of interest that these routes focus on. So schools, libraries, grocery stores. So, we're certainly not going to argue that in the second year of the pilot that we've covered all schools, but schools definitely factor into where these routes are chosen. And we'll continue to do so if we're able to kind of build on this network that we're building.
Just one other question. In terms of local hiring, how realistic are we in terms of our potential to do local hiring for?
What do you mean?
Well, and I guess that speaks to the amount, it may not be able to be determined at this point, but, the number of people, for example.
Yeah.
Like how realistic are we with the number of?
So in conversations with JSK, I think right now they're anticipating adding, 2 or 3 new employees. It's not, it's and this program hopefully will build over time,
Right.
in terms of the additional staff, where the anticipation right now is about 2 or 3.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. All right, that's all I got.
With the contractors, what was what time frames did we use last year? If it snows before a certain time, they plow. If it snows past a certain time, they plow. How did that work? And how is it going to work?
So last year it was sort of a 24-hour operation. If we got word that it was going to snow 3 inches at midnight, we would work with the contractor to try and get out a little bit ahead of that, but acknowledging that from the time of deployment, from the time we acknowledge there's a snow event, we want it to be cleared within 12 hours. So that would open us up to possibly clearing twice in one day if we had a terrible storm. But I think what your question is getting at is, how do we converse with the contractor? How do we decide when they go out? And that's pretty much staying the same now, where if it's 3 a.m. and they need to go because the forecast has changed, we have people at DPW ready to respond.
Okay.
So it's not as if they don't go out at 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. and just clear what's there. When the 3 inches of snow fall, they're clearing it within 12 hours of when we've confirmed that snow has fallen. So it's not as if it snows at 8 a.m. And by noon there's 3 inches, they're like, well, we're not coming out again until 6. That's not how it works. It's when the snow falls, they're out and they're clearing.
Okay. And is there a priority to the map? Because you're saying, how many people are you going to be having plow?
4 or 5 this year, depending on snowfall, and we're clearing the most efficient way for us. We divide up and stagger.
You gotta come up to the microphone.
Yes. Just introduce yourself.
Nick Henry, JSK Snow Services. We're plowing efficiently. We're looking to save time, get them cleared as fast as possible. So as of right now, we do not have any area that's more important than another, but I will tell you that we start in downtown for the most part. All of our machines head to downtown and work their way out, and then they turn around and work their way back in. And what that gives the public is, no matter what, they have one side of the road with a cleared sidewalk as soon as possible, and then if it's actively snowing while we're plowing, on our way back in, the other side of the sidewalk is now cleared on our way back in, to kind of no matter what, one side or the other is cleared is the goal there on the entirety of the map.
And as you're plowing, if you come to areas where it's not designated, if you're plowing out, if you're going out Genesee Street and you get out a certain place, you actually do go almost to the city line, so it doesn't matter. Do you go to the city line basically in all directions? Is that, I guess?
Not necessarily. I mean, and that's kind of outlined in the map. To the north, I don't think we go. There are certain areas, because that's where the pedestrian traffic is, that I think to the east, the west, and the south, right? We're almost to the city line. It's not necessarily.
But the reason I say this, and that sounds like a good, efficient way to do it from your point of view, is that we obviously want to have the sidewalks cleared the best they can be for kids walking to school. And hopefully they won't walk in the road, but walk on the sidewalks that are plowed.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking the times that you do it, and the designations of where you do it around first.
Well, we work based on the weather. We're a snowplow company. So like they said, we deploy whenever the snow comes. This is our job. This is what we do. I'm going to use the southwest side of the city for an example, because I know that section very well. I know there's a school at the end of Glenwood. Just using that as an example, our tractor operator will be plowing down Salina and across Brighton and down Glenwood. And when he goes past that school on Glenwood, he will keep on plowing up Geddes, and he'll go all the way around the block. And then he will basically be doing the exterior of the map, and then he will come back and do the interior on the same run, but as a second pass, I guess, on each road. And that allows us to open up one sidewalk as soon as possible, and then the second one later on. So if a pedestrian is walking, they have the option to, when they get to the intersection, to cross the road and get on the cleared sidewalk and walk. That was our goal, and that's very efficient for us. Our guy is not driving down a road, he's not plowing ever, which increases our speed, and it increases the rate at which we can clear sidewalks for you guys.
Thank you. And the second question I have is regarding the insurance. What did you say?
That
are we going to
that the JSK was able to add the city to their policy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rudd? Councilor Lovejoy-Graham?
Yeah. So first I have some questions. First I want to say I want to thank the city for starting this project last year. I think it's a great, and I want to especially, thank Third District Councilor Bob Doherty for being the light that brought this project forward. So,
Yeah, you can go now. You got your positive feedback.
So I with that in mind, you'll have to catch me up a little bit because I know that some of these conversations have happened at other times, but based on this presentation, I have some questions. So first, just details on the list of the streets with sidewalks to be cleared. Again, thinking from the lens of the 3rd District. So this Glenwood / South Ave, I think it's like the 8th or 9th listed street.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe what this means? Because Glenwood and South obviously are not the same street. There's no other streets that are listed with a dash right like that. So what does that mean? It seems like Nick just said we're doing all of Glenwood from south to Geddes, but that's not how I read this chart.
So, being that you're intricately familiar with that area, you'll know that that's quite an intersection, and it doesn't line up.
Which one?
Glenwood, South Ave, Valley Drive, and so that's the reason why it's listed that way. If you refer back to the map, you'll see that we're doing that entire portion of Glenwood and all of South Ave. So the routes come together there.
Okay.
And it's just an efficient way of listing it for us and for the contractor. But it's not intended, we're not skipping over a block or anything like that. The routes are contiguous.
So even though the chart doesn't specifically say this means Glenwood from south all the way to Geddes?
Yes.
And then Geddes separately, I thought Geddes, South Geddes is listed here separately, where you're doing Glenwood to West Genesee, that whole stretch of Geddes as well. Okay, and then South Ave is done separately. So that
Right.
all of those, what Nick was suggesting, that he's going to go up one side, do the whole loop, and then come back around. Okay, good. Just want to make sure I understand that. In this map that we're looking at right here, what is the blue and what is the purple?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we should have covered that. So the pink is the
Okay.
new.
The
Pink is the old.
pink is the existing from last year. The blue is what we've added this year. And
Oh, blue new.
Blue new.
Yeah.
Blue new.
Should have remembered that. So the blue are the new additions to this year, and the pink is the existing map from last year.
Okay, so then that's Valley, again, looking at the 3rd District. So that's Valley is the new blue section there?
Yes.
Okay. So from south. Okay, that's a big chunk. That's great. Okay, because this presentation didn't cover it, I have some questions about kind of the big picture. So what does $250,000 represent? Is that a contract? Is it a rate? Is it based on a rate of pay? How did you come to that amount? How is it related to 2008 versus 2019 versus 2018?
Sure. We had set aside a smaller amount last year just because it was our first time out and we weren't sure how much to budget for it. And the way that it's structured here, it is basically a per deployment fee, cost per deployment. And so our estimate, is $250,000 based on, I think it's about 50 deployments throughout the season.
50 deployments. And, okay, how do you get to 50? How do you, where does that compare? I know we had a shorter season last year.
Sure.
Where does that compare?
So last year we had taken, and I think it informed this year's decision too. Last year we took a look historically at Syracuse's snowfall to see how many days, how many incidents we had of 3 or more inches of snowfall. So I think that largely gives us the number of, I think 50 might be a pretty bad winter, but when you
Don't they usually do 25 plows usually?
I think we're trying to be conservative, let's err on if you talk to one person, they say it's going to be a horrible winter. Other people say this year is going to be mild. But the cost is structured in a way that it's per deployment, and we came up with that number basically looking at historical weather data.
And to build on Corey's points, we have shot high, definitely, but we also have...
Sorry to interrupt you, you just mean you're estimating a higher...
The number of deployments.
expected.
We want to have
More money, more cushion.
Exactly. We don't want to run out prematurely. But also, as part of this contract, we do have a provision that allows JSK to go out and clear, even when it doesn't hit 3 inches, if there are issues where, say, they already cleared, we know it's not snowing again. However, due to the way that temperatures rose or whatever else it is, they could go back and touch up corners, go back along routes, and that would be another deployment that we can use.
But that wouldn't be charged the same rate as a full deployment? Or
No, that would all be under the same deployment. If they're going out, they're doing all the routes. There's no selective piecing them out.
So can you give us then the breakdown of what the per deployment cost is? If you're saying 250 is based on 50, so are we saying that's...
So I can get you the breakdown that we've got in the contract. I don't have it in front of me right now. It's basically, it's per deployment, and the way that it's structured, it's sort of, I think if it's less a little bit later in the season or whatever it is, I can get you those details of how per deployment it's broken down.
Because I think it's, again, from the perspective of, plowing as a DPW service, why is this not a DPW service? It will be helpful. I know, Jeremy, I know. But, I think it's helpful to look at what are the rates that we're paying for this contract versus what would be not that, commissioner is going to be expected to put together that, but tell me how the rate came to be and how we can justify, again, without competitive bid, how we can justify it.
Sure. I mean, and it's a lot of the messaging from last year, I think, is still relevant this year because of the shortened season that we have. We really consider this kind of an extension of the original pilot. And this is, although, we did really well, I think, and JSK has been a terrific partner, we had a really shortened season last year. And so we really see this as last year we launched this as a pilot because this was something that we hadn't done before. We weren't sure what kinks we were going to hit, what bumps in the road. JSK is a really strong partner, and everything went smoothly. And so I think we see this as a continuation of that pilot. So there are some, how would this compare if we tried to do it in-house? How would it compare if, and so there are some questions that we have and things that we think that this will help inform us. So I'll make sure to get you that information on the deployment.
I'd like to say that, for the councilor's edification, that I think last year, when we bid this, there were only 2 people that came in originally. 0 originally. Then you had pros something that were here, yes, they were here. And then, but there were only, so there were 2 that actually, but these were the only ones that followed through.
Yes.
So that
I'm aware.
they did put it, remember? They did
Yeah,
put it.
nobody responded to the RFP.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you did have.
But we had a couple, I mean, we were, I think, speaking for myself, we were fortunate to find JSK. They've been a really strong partner, and, we kind of went into it last year saying, I don't know, let's give this a shot and see how it goes. And it's, due to the timing, we did have a shortened season, but we're really looking forward to working with them this season and really getting a full picture of how this program works throughout the year.
And just for some more background, you purchased equipment last year too, correct?
Correct. Last year, we purchased 3 brand-new tractors just to plow these city sidewalks, and this year we have added 2 more. One's not a tractor. It's actually a miniature payloader that we're going to attempt to use, and another tractor as well. So we're up to 5 this year that have already been purchased. We're getting them ready to go right now.
So maybe it won't snow if they're all ready, right?
That tends to be how it goes for us.
Okay, so one of the questions I get a lot is why this street and not that street, and obviously it's driven by data from SMTC, but can you expand upon that a little bit of, how that worked?
Sure, happy to do so. That's a question we get pretty regularly, or that we got last year pretty regularly. So last year we sat down with SMTC and mapped out primary arterials, which are the busiest streets in town. These are the James Streets and the Genesee Streets, places where I think we all know collectively there's a high volume of motor vehicle traffic. On top of that, we looked at other very busy streets, so maybe they're major collectors. That's just one step down, but still very high volumes. In looking at that network of streets, we then layered on where are the schools, where are the senior centers, where are the known pedestrian generators. So those could be churches, shopping centers, you name it. And we took a look at where are people walking, where do we have existing PED data, and where are the streets that we want to focus on, because we can't do all of them, but where is the biggest bang for buck when it comes to safety? And so you will hear that, oh, someone's walking in the street or something else along those lines. We want to provide a clear path for pedestrians as part of our transportation network. And if you look at the map, these routes all sort of snake back together. So we're creating a usable network year-round for pedestrians based on safety, based on traffic volumes, and based on where we know folks are going. Yes, we would love to include more streets, but there are choices that have to be made, and we feel very comfortable in the choices that we've made based on the data and everything else.
Okay. And then my next question is in a larger picture. So this is year 2 of the pilot. If we were to do year 3, it's not really a pilot anymore. It's just like what we're doing. So how are we evaluating what we're doing this year in terms of determining what the future policy is going to be? And how does that relate to, is it a full RFP next year? Is there plans to further expand the network into more streets? The funding mechanism, is it going to be something different? What's our future plans? And we don't have to commit to it now, but what are we looking for this year to determine whether or not it's something we want to continue or expand or contract?
This is going to be a twofer here. I'll take the first half and I'll hand off to Corey. So similar to last year, we keep track of all the deployments. We keep track of any issues or anyone calling in and saying thank you or congratulations. So we take care of all that. We will compile that the same way we did last year in a technical memo back out to the council, highlighting the successes, areas that were improved on last year, areas that can still be improved on moving forward. But that's going to stay the same moving forward as it relates to policy and long term.
I think we would like to continue building on this network. Sidewalk snow removal is a priority for the administration, and I think for the community in general. And last year in the slide we had all the Sean Kirst articles and decades worth of articles about why can't we figure out, some letters to the editor, I'm sure, from Bob Doherty, why can't we figure out how to clear sidewalks? So we want to continue building on this program. I think the real question is the funding. And similarly to last year, you're right, once we're through one full year, we can't really call it a pilot any longer. Because we want to get this done, because we might hit some bumps in the road, we allocated money in the existing budget to cover the cost, but we're going to have a conversation with the council, with the community about how do we fund this program going forward. Does it become something that is a budget item in DPW's budget? Does it become, in which case the costs are going to continue to escalate? Does it become a separate fee like it is in other municipalities that property owners pay in order to have sidewalks cleared? And what does that fee structure look like? So that conversation certainly is looming, that we're going to have to talk about how we fund this program going forward. This year, while we extend the pilot, we can fund it through our budget, but it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have.
And in my mind, I think of them as almost tiers, right? So like the first year we did it, presumably, we picked the 20 miles that were the most needed. This year it's the next 18. Mm-hmm. So I think part of that conversation needs to be, how many tiers are there where at a certain point there's diminishing return, mm-hmm. and, what does that look like? So
yeah. I think it's a conversation with the administration, the council, the community. Is the goal here to the Sainted Rochester model where, in theory, every sidewalk throughout the entire city is cleared? Is the goal here really to cover principal arterials? And then once we hit that, then we're gonna cap it, and that's where we clear snow. It's certainly not a decision we wanna make entirely on our own. We wanna work with the council and with the community to determine what's the future of the program.
Thanks. A few more quick questions. First, I want to say, and maybe in relation to Councilor Green's questioning, just my logic, ideally, we create such a workload for these guys, they have no choice but to hire people. That's ideal for me.
Too much snow, though. We don't want that.
I've always been a supporter of the idea of a fee for sidewalk cleanup, which I think, at least from our previous discussions in the past, amounts to about $6 a month per household or per property owner. We pay taxes to cover that cost. Anyway, relative to the progress report, excuse me if I heard it wrong, but I think you mentioned that downtown is usually where you start. And the question is not to suggest that it's, or maybe the question/statement is not to suggest that it's not being done. But I would certainly like us to look at, and this is to Councilor Thompson's statement, the clear sidewalks to schools being the priority even before downtown. A big part of the discussion, not the totality of the discussion, but a big part of the discussion came up because of kids walking in the street during the winter. And so if the sidewalks leading to the schools can become the priority, I would certainly be a lot more satisfied with that. Even though we learned that there's a couple other reasons why people walk in the street here, even in the summer. I'll get back to that.
Well, that's, I've said.
We walk in the street no matter what.
I'm under no illusion that, on these roads, now everybody's going to walk on the sidewalk. I just don't want the reason that someone's walking in the street
Snow.
because we haven't cleared the sidewalk.
All right, gotcha. Because I've been there. All right.
We're on the same page.
So I was reading about some of the struggles with clearing sidewalks that are broken. And I'm sure consideration is being given to, we know it's costly. This goes back to the whole fees to sidewalk kind of program. Because I'm sure consideration is being given to how do we keep up, sidewalk repair to make the plowing more easier. Are we putting pressure on property owners and landlords to fix their sidewalks, that kind of thing? Or is it coming? Maybe that's more of the question I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I will say that we are having conversations about, and I know, this isn't the first time, and it's a complicated issue. If it were easy, someone would have solved it already, but sidewalks in general, how do we really make sure that we're creating a more walkable city? Does our current program really promote that, or is it often used as a tool, neighbor against neighbor? And so how do we get to a more proactive, really moving the ball forward on making a more walkable city?
I know one thing you can do, and it's exactly what I said you should do a year ago.
I know.
Which is you should go walk the 20 miles from last year, which we didn't do, and we should walk the new 18. So we got 38 miles to walk, and you should condemn the sidewalks that are condemnable now. We don't know the status of the sidewalks that are there. Somebody should go walk them.
Go ahead.
Well, last year we did have someone actually walk our sidewalk.
Did he?
Yeah, our sidewalk person actually walked the 20 miles with a representative, I believe, of you guys, right?
We inspected, but we didn't actually walk.
Okay,
We did full inspection.
Well, Chris,
What I heard was they went to look to see if they could do the job and what they would how it would work. But I never heard that Chris went around and actually
Chris did.
condemned. Can we see something that shows the status of all the
I'm sure we can
some
get
of
that
that
to you, Council.
con?
And we can do that this year as well, so.
All right,
So we were
Councilor
down
Rudd,
at
stop
DPW,
interrupting my
so-
questions. Not playing. So I saw that there, which I can appreciate, contact with the police department, and I saw that there was rapid response in relation to that. Be interested to see the difference between last year and this year. I'm going to rat on somebody right now. I know Peace Incorporated leaves a pile of snow in front of their garage on Kennedy Street. I live there, so I see it every winter. Hint. But not only that, one of my pet peeves is the cars that park on the sidewalk and on their lawn, which I know I often complain about often. So I'm hoping that maybe even in this process it'll allow us to provide some more oversight in that respect. I'm pretty sure a car on the sidewalk stops you from plowing.
Yeah.
This I did hear about a few times, people losing sewer caps, and they were essentially obligated. So I'm wondering, how is a constituent required. And then now, let me be clear, we know that all sewer caps are not lost because of the plowing, but maybe for the few that actually are, or the one or two that are, who's the responsibility on at that point? One person found it absolutely impossible to find a sewer cap. I don't know why, but I figured I'd ask.
So in that case, I think the city will replace the sewer cap for them. So, I mean, all you got to do is give us a call and we'll come down and replace the sewer cap. In that case.
I mean, it's got to be something along the route. You can't
Yeah.
pretend
Yeah, it can't be like
something-
you over here,
I feel
right?
like they went rogue and took my sewer cap, yeah.
Just two more.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work with homeowners that feel that's the case.
So I'm guessing that the service we're paying for, and this again, I think is related to Lovejoy Grinnell's question about what are we paying for, and the report talk about obstructions and it preventing some clearing, and so I'm assuming that we're only paying for plowing, and so no shoveling is a part of that.
That is correct. On top of clearing, however, there is end-of-season maintenance. So if there were, say, issues with turf being disturbed in the snow lawn or in the tree lawn or anything like that, that is built into the end-of-season cleanup items for JSK. But to your point about obstructions or anything like that, the vast majority of sidewalks are clearable. There are only less than half a dozen small areas where, say, there is an existing guy wire, utility pole, something, parking meter, and we've acknowledged that, and we're working to rectify those as much as we can.
Okay. My last one is just a statement in regards to people walking in the street. So I've learned, also as a person who walks in the street sometimes, that it's not just snow. It's the fear of loose dogs and dark streets. So at some point we may have to consider, maybe this lighting program will brighten our sidewalks up a little more, but sidewalks tend to be dark, and so people get in the street where the street lights are.
Yeah. And I would be remiss not to remind everyone, as the title of the program is, this is a supplemental service. And so property owners are still responsible for shoveling their sidewalk, salting their sidewalks. This is a supplemental service provided by the city.
And to Councilor Bay's point, even if someone does walk in the street despite a clear sidewalk, doesn't mean the city shouldn't be providing safe sidewalk.
Oh, absolutely.
Some people don't wear their seatbelt, doesn't mean we should stop putting seatbelts in cars, right? So,
Right.
Just one question, one comment. How are we going to notify the new businesses and homeowners on this route? Let them know that in fact this service is going to be available, so in case they might have called for services, to have somebody do that. A, and B, to let them know to keep obstacles out from in front of their, like cars parked on the, between sidewalk and curbs and stuff like that. I mean, there probably should something go out to the businesses and that.
Yeah, we should have like I said, Chris Edinger, who's going to be our point person for this project, he should be able to go out and walk the actual routes and see if there's any obstacles and get back to JSK.
No, I mean for the homeowners here.
Yeah, they should
Send them a letter or a postcard or something saying this is going to happen on your.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
I think that would be and the past ones too, so that they know it's coming again. And I looked at the very top one here, Avery. It says West Genesee Street. It's supposed to be to Burnett Park, right? Well, that's a joke.
Right past Steve Tompkins' house. You're right.
All
Yeah.
set. That's a good route,
Yeah.
actually, go to Tompkins.
I didn't get my street on here either, but here's hoping.
Yep.
Forgive me if this has been covered in the past somehow, but with I live on a route. So I park on the sidewalk for the night and it snows a bunch. What should I expect? A ticket?
You park
a tow?
over the sidewalk?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't ever do this, but I see a lot of people who do this. So what should, if I choose to park my car blocking the sidewalk and it snows 6 inches, what should I expect? My car to get towed? My car to get ticketed and towed?
Yes.
I would say
So-
that you should. I mean, am I gonna guarantee it happens every single time? But it shouldn't be unreasonable to expect that your car gets ticketed and towed.
How would we expect it to happen? Is the contractor going to have a contact in
SPD.
police? They'll like text somebody and be like, hey, 224.
From the few times we did call last year, we're semi-forgiving, I'm going to say, meaning if you have a small driveway and we're squeaking by your car, we deal with that. Those type of peoples, we understand. A few people were blatantly parking over the sidewalk, in which case last year we called 911, as that's what we were instructed to do. Told them it was a non-emergency, and we had a great response time. Mostly it was on the north side, or the 3 times I called was on the north side. And the gentleman who responded, I believe he was a sheriff. I cannot remember though, but he gave me his cell phone number, and he said that if I had an issue, contact him directly. And that worked extremely well. And to my knowledge, I'm not 100% sure on this, but he was knocking on doors and telling them that this was their one and only warning, as it was a new program last year and it started late in the year. That worked out well. Obviously, once somebody got a warning, they were no longer on the sidewalk, and that problem dwindled extremely fast. I don't know if it was word of mouth between the neighbors or whatnot, but that problem went away quickly and without a lot of issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of things, it's a culture change that, we're prioritizing sidewalks and we're prioritizing snow removal, and so, behaviors that you might have engaged in the past are just not acceptable now. So, but I would guess that SPD would make efforts to get the person to move the car before we have to tow it.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that because, it seems a bit, or could be a bit problematic to obligate them to go through 911, so I can appreciate them getting some, but why not a direct call to traffic officers?
Sure.
Who are out there dealing with traffic issues anyway.
Yeah.
And who could respond.
Okay, yeah, we can work with, I guess it would be Deputy Chief Trudell.
It's called dispatch.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier this 12-hour window. That can you describe more about what that is, what the contract says? Because you also said that if the snow stops at noon, they don't have to wait till 6 p.m. to go out again, but that would actually be well within their 12-hour window. So can you describe what the expectation is in the contract about when the plowing will occur relative to the snowfall, starting, stopping, reaching 3 inches, whatever?
So we have some provisions in the contract that allow for a deployment at 3 inches. We also acknowledge that sometimes it snows 2 inches, stops, and snows another inch 2 hours later. We've worked that in through discussions with the contractor. Also, we know that sometimes it snows 5 or 6 inches in one swoop. So what we did last year and what we're going to continue to do this year is work with the contractor to get them out as soon as possible. If we know a storm is coming and we know the majority of the snowfall is going to be at 3 a.m., we will give them advance okay to start clearing at 3 a.m. The 12-hour window was put into the original contract just to give us some metrics about what we expect from a clearing on the city side. And so that is all routes would be cleared within 12 hours once we say go. And that would allow for the possibility of 2 clearings in one day, but that is a very rare occurrence.
So in 2019, what was the feedback? Do you have any way to measure, either anecdotally or objectively, how quickly those routes were cleared? Obviously, it's much more useful for those, as to Councilor Bay's point, for the school routes to be completed by the time kids are walking to school at 7 or 7:30 than it is the downtown corridors, which may not have as much traffic until later.
So the clearings took significantly less than 12 hours. And that came from experience with JSK clearing the routes. The first clearing took a little longer than expected, but that was what we anticipated, at least on the city side. Moving forward through the clearings, the time to clear went down significantly. So that 12-hour window is generous. And that's, again, to give ourselves a little bit of leeway here on how we're clearing, when we expect them to go. As it relates to clearing school routes or parsing out priority routes, all of these are priority routes. All of these routes have areas where we can expect residents of all ages, young, old, in the middle, to be walking. So we'll work with the contractor to evaluate how they deploy, and if maybe it's one side of the street, we know there's 3 schools, and we'll deploy on that side first. We're definitely open to having that conversation. We have a very good relationship with JSK.
And I think that's in part why the GPS units on the trackers will be helpful, because so that way we can have data to report, well, how long does it take us to clear the route in these conditions or in these conditions? And so, I mean, I think that's some additional information that we'll be able to gather with the units on the tractors.
So the answer then is we really don't have that for the 2019.
I mean, I don't know that we have a chart that says, in this case, it took 4 hours and 17 minutes. In this case, it took 6 hours.
Or an average of, per deployment, however many deployments there were, it took on average of X amount of time.
We probably have the best numbers because we were monitoring that extremely well. Last year, we had anywhere from an 8.5 hour deployment, which was our very first one, down to a 3.5 hour deployment at the end of the year. A lot of that is depicted based on snowfall amount and on a location basis. Some of these roads, when they get plowed, it doesn't affect the sidewalk. Other roads, after the roads get plowed, the sidewalks are buried with snow. Those obviously take a lot more time to get cleared. We do our best to avoid them on the way out and clear them on the way back, as to clear as much of the area as fast as possible, and then deal with those problem areas on not so crucial time limit was our goal. This year, we're obviously adding 2 more pieces of equipment. In the beginning, we know we aren't going to be as fast as we were last year because of the new sidewalks that we have to figure out. The pre-deployment prep will help, but we're shooting, same thing as last year, an 8-hour plow on the first one and getting faster from there.
That's helpful.
Of the 20 miles last year, do you have any sense of how many actually have the small snow space where the plow does push it onto the sidewalk all over again?
Off the top of my head, I do not. I can tell you that it was a learning curve for us and the DPW early on, and the first and second time around, the DPW was burying us on some sidewalks, but it was also due to lack of knowledge on their part on what we could move and what we couldn't. By the last snowfall, in those areas where the plow tends to bury the sidewalk, they had learned that. The drivers on an individual basis had learned that, and they had slowed down, and they had reduced a lot of that. That was very helpful to us, as well as keeping the sidewalks open after we had plowed. So.
We call that concrete snow. I remember when the previous commissioner was here, we made a case for, homeowners who, don't have a shovel strong enough to break through that stuff. They come out, they shovel their entire sidewalk, their driveway, they go in the house and turn around, and it's right back in the sidewalk. And they could potentially get ticketed because they can't move it. And, obviously, that's just one of those things we got to figure out. I just have one other question came to mind. Any priority given to schools on or near hills?
Yeah, so you'll see on some of these routes, there are some differences in our school typologies. Obviously, some of them are on very busy roads. Others are set back into the neighborhood. So that was definitely taken into account. Topography, yes, but it was a second factor. But any primary arterial with a school on it was a tier 1 street that wasn't going to be left off.
So I have to mention at least that the parking and driving and walking situation around Hughes and Latin School, where my children attend, 2 of my kids go, is a terrible situation. It's a bad, yes, that's right. Counselor Allen's and Counselor Bay's kids also go there. And I understand it's not here. I understand that it's not, there's not sidewalks on both sides of the street, but that is a safety issue for kids who go to that school, also in the 3rd district, that I would like some attention to in the next version, because kids who have to walk to that school, I I think it's a very dangerous situation there with no sidewalks in some places. And I want to drill down a little bit on the cost, because I think this is a fantastic program. I think, I live near Glenwood, and it makes a huge difference. It has made a huge difference there with the kids in the street. Kids are much more likely to take the sidewalks with this program last year. But I'm trying to figure out the cost of this, and I see, so 38 miles, I think that the calculation is if it's 50 deployments, 38 miles, and each route takes, I don't know how long each route takes. I'm guessing like maybe you go a mile every 15 minutes if you have to clear off, something like that. That comes out to a total of 475 hours of plowing for 50, again, very high estimate of that $250,000 total contract being used. That comes out to a cost of $526 an hour. That's the rate of pay that we're paying for this program if we spend all $250,000. So I guess an explanation of how that's justified would be really useful, I think, to me, prior to voting on this, because that's a really high number that it's hard to imagine even the commissioner could find folks to do that work.
I think if you take, I'd be happy to get you the details. I think if we were to do it internally, the staff that would be required, the equipment that would be required, the workers' comp that would inevitably result, the benefits, I don't know that $500 an hour to have this program, I think is a reasonable. We would need more equipment. It wouldn't just be. It's not one person getting paid $500.
No, the equipment cost is built into that hourly cost. But I think it's also important to think about every time they're going out there and they're spending that time, that 3 hours, that whatever, it's costing us that much money, and it's just part of the conversation of. We are in a pilot stage.
Sure.
Does this make sense? Is there a way to do this more cheaply, or are we not reflecting all? Of course, there's benefits that you can't quantify economically.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest about and open about what those benefits are.
And that's, I think, in part why why we're establishing it as a pilot. It's just let's figure out how much this costs us, and then is it feasible to try and to do it in house, or does it really? Can we demonstrate that there's a benefit to having someone else do it, given all the logistics and the timing and the fact that they're on call whenever it snows, and and whether those benefits outweigh trying to do it in-house.
Sure.
I think one of the other costs that you can run down your costs, but I know you've got other things. You've got gas, you've got repairs, you've got maintenance, you've got oil, you've got all these things that when we think it's like cut my yard, but what does the person that comes and cuts the yard have to pay, and what's it to them? So.
Sure.
Well, I will, her numbers were fairly close. I've ran them top to bottom. We've ran them a lot, obviously. It's almost $100 per piece of equipment per hour. Obviously, as you said, out of that $100 per hour, we have to pay an employee. We have to pay for the equipment. We have to repair it. And what a lot of people don't see in the snow business is all the preparation work that we have to do to get ready to go plowing. And whether it I guess there's no good way to explain it, but if it doesn't snow today, we still have a business to run, employees to pay, and it's not like we can just not have any expenses when it doesn't snow. So that's a certain cost that everybody that needs snow removal has to incur, as the business has to keep their doors open for that 6 months. So, and the other thing for us is insurance. The insurance cost on this project is huge, as everybody knows. We've had an excellent insurance track record for 27 years. And there was only one insurance company that would even consider insuring us for this project. So, and it was not cheap by any means. So insurance is a huge cost here, and I'm not sure how that would affect you guys if you did it on your own, though.
And I will just say, just on the schools issue, that's a conversation that Neil and I have been having, and we've also talked about working with SMTC to look at some of the schools, through other projects, through this one, Hughes, through some of the work we've been looking at on Geddes and Fayette, the school that is called Delaware. Just looking at the drop-off and some of the traffic patterns around some of the schools are really problematic. So that has been a conversation that we've been having, whether or not, we try and determine what criteria we would use to pick which schools to look at, but there are some really problematic traffic patterns around some of the schools in terms of drop-off, and I know you all hear it as well in community meetings that, you know, during drop-off, people are just racing down the street, it's dangerous for children, so that's certainly on our radar, and I'm hoping that we can have some more conversations about how to make that safer.
And on that topic, certainly we've all heard and been part of conversations related to attendance and school funding, and I would be very interested to understand the intersection between this sidewalk program and attendance rates, because certainly, at least the district sometimes talks about, well, you know, kids have a hard time getting to school when their routes aren't plowed, and certainly reducing the walk distance helps that. But I would guess if you're prioritizing school walking zones, that this would also help that, and it would be great to actually see some data on that.
No, that does make sense.
Maybe we could get the school district to help pay for it? No, don't take money from that.
Is there any member of the public that has a brief question or comment?
Brief, very brief.
I'm timing you.
Yeah. Everybody's pretty much stolen my thunder, but just two things. Number one, I watched these guys working last year. I believe in local hiring. I hope we can hire some local people, et cetera, but they did a wonderful job. You know, very conscientious. I especially appreciated you talking about, you know, getting plowed back in again. And I know I saw them going through after initially plow and then come through and plowing out the stuff that had been plowed back in, which I think is great. The other thing is, and again, you've all talked about it, but I don't think it's that hard. And, you know, this is great what you're doing. Okay, but I don't think it's that hard to point out where all the schools are on this map. And everybody said that. Okay, but it only take about 3 or 4 people in a room from Parks, obviously the school district, DPW, and these fellas to figure out how to get from the school to these priority routes. Some of the schools are obviously on the priority route. I'm not trying to just get Kennedy Street plowed for my supporter, Councilor Bay here. But I don't think, I mean, if you take the schools as the hub, and just, you know, a few axles going out to these main, I really don't think it would be that hard to do. I mean, what you're doing is great.
Yeah.
You know, but particularly every school's got a snow blower. Okay.
Yeah,
and DPW runs around with them. Parks runs around with them.
Yes.
On the back of their trucks too. And you know, people that do it do a good job. Sometimes it's just a question of saying, like we did with the Cecil Center, how about getting the bridge over Seneca Turnpike? And so they do it.
Yes.
You know, and I think that stuff could happen.
Yeah, those conversations are ongoing with the school districts. We would love anyone's help in making that case that along this map, there are some just really small, you know, a block or two that would connect the school to this network of streets that we're clearing. And so we do have those maps, and we're working with the district to see how.
You got the I team right down there.
Yeah, well, we have the information. I don't think it's
a lot of big brains here too. You know?
Just getting folks to sign on.
Any other questions?
Good meeting, man.
Well, I would just say in general, I mean, I think the goal of increasing walkability around the city is very much needed, so I really appreciate all the efforts to make this improvement. So,
well, and thank you to the council for all of your support in making this. It was a long time coming, and we're really proud to have gotten it done.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.